Hey everybody, welcome back to a DTV Esports podcast. Of course, I'm Billy Spotz, joined today by our wonderful newbie, is what we're going to call the new people coming in through the DTV Esports thing.
I'll let him introduce himself. I'm Taylor White. Nice to be here. Nice to talk about stuff with you.
Yeah. Today we're doing a Worlds kind of quarterfinals, semifinals preview, review, and then finals preview, just because we weren't able to do it last week. We're also back in person, which is great. Obviously still masked up and everything, but it was definitely kind of like I miss being able to do this face to face with people, just because like you'd get stuck in that rut of, oh yeah, I'm doing it over Zoom and I'm kind of it's fine. But yeah, no, it's great to be back in Allen in our lovely podcast studio talking about League of Legends. Mainly just talking about our two finalists, Edward Gaming and Damwon Kia. I'm very much someone who is obsessed with like League history. I've been watching for, at this point, a third of my life, which I did the math recently. Was like, oh, is that good? Is that bad? Because I've been watching since I was 14.
Hey, it is honestly a symptom of living in the 21st century, honestly. If you're interested in gaming, if you're interested in esports, you're probably watching League.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just in general, like not wasting your time. I was going to make a bad joke. Or just like
wasting our time, and we're both on the esports group for
hey, you know what?
TV.
There is no other way I'd love to spend my time. But yeah, so this is definitely a year that's reminiscent of 2016, where it really kind of felt like the final was the semifinal, right? So you watched, T1 versus Damwon. Great series, already up there with the Rocks SKT series from 2016 that I'm comparing it to. But it's just looking at our two competitors and primarily focusing on that series initially. It was one of those things where it's like, I think Damwon is so heavily favored going into the finals.
I would agree. From a lot of what I saw from Damwon, they were able to adapt really well. Like T1 had a whole lot of good strategies and had a whole lot of good players, and they were able to get a lot of good picks that turned the tide for them, especially in the early game. However, after about 15 minutes, just about after both heralds were taken, Damwon Kia seemed to get an approach on the strategy they needed to develop to counter whatever T1 was bringing.
They're really good at like adapting on the fly, and I think that's been a strength of theirs for a while. And I think a big part of that is Showmaker and Kanan. Like, this isn't a unique point. This isn't me like bringing some like new thing to it. It's just the mid jungle duo of Canyon and Showmaker just so rarely seem to put a foot wrong. Like, if you go through the worst performance I think I've seen them have was in that game 2 against T1, right? Where they finished 2-3-3 and 1-3-3. But if you watch that game the entire way through, it's very much just like, oh, they didn't do anything wrong. They were fine. It was a product of the map play not going perfectly, but like just the way they're able to affect the map, mainly Showmaker, right? Because it's like, it feels like he's always in a position to roam effectively, and it's, I spend too much time on Twitter.
But no, I know what you're saying. Cause, what game was it that Showmaker played Zoe? Was that game 5?
Yes,
game
I believe
5.
So. Yeah. God, yeah.
If I recall, there was a team fight mid, and they lost two other people early on. T1 had a really good pinch, and they took out 2 members of Damwon. And it was just Showmaker, and I believe Canyon was one of the ones killed, but it was just 2 to 3 of them left. And they had to defend Baron because T1 was heading straight there. But they managed with a really good poke from Showmaker to scare them off Baron. They were able to run them out of gas. So that even though they had won that team fight, they were not able to capture the objective that team fight was about.
Yeah. And you and I were talking about it very briefly beforehand, but it really you mentioned something that I really want to kind of pick your brain about, because I really like the way you're going with it. But you mentioned how it felt like Damwon was so willing to give up Baron, and I think that's a really interesting addition. I mean, we've had Elemental Drakes at this point for 2 seasons, Dragon Soul, and Elder Drake's been around longer, especially in its like current form. But the addition of Dragon Soul really kind of the one thing I really appreciate about it is that it's definitely felt like they've forced teams to make that decision, right? Where it's like, okay, you're either going, because like previously, like when I started watching, it was like dragons were whatever. Like yes, they gave you buffs, but they were easier to fight against than a Baron buff. So it's like Baron was that like end game level objective where it's like if the other team got Baron, they were likely going to immediately like run down at least 2 or 3 of your turrets, potentially break your base. Oftentimes it was an end condition for a lot of compositions. And so what I've really liked seeing is this kind of refocusing on, okay, you're really forced to play split map. You are not allowed to just focus on one side of the map. It's like you have to have Dragon Prio or you're going to give up Soul and then eventually Elder.
I believe we saw that with the, I think it was Edward's gaming match with, I believe
was it against
Jax.
Was it the one against I mean I have it pulled up right here.
No, but like their most recent match. I think it was their Jax. With Jax top laner.
Yeah.
During one of those big fights, the team lost track of Jax, and Jax was heading down mid. They had given them Baron, they had taken Dragon, but in that Dragon fight, it didn't matter. They had taken Elder Dragon, and Jax was demolishing their turrets down the line. It forced 2 of the other team's players back to base, but they were not able to stop it. It was the Jack versus Gwen top fight.
Yeah.
That and I feel bad because watching that they sent Gwen back, but Gwen had not been able to step up to Jax that whole match. So sending Gwen back,
to send her on like a suicide mission.
Yeah, like there's no way that fed multiple legendaries, multiple build Jack.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah.
Be beaten by Gwen when she wasn't able to counter him the entire match. Which is why they ended up having to send a second back too. But it just didn't matter.
Yeah. And I think that's and like we talked about meta a little bit last time with when we had Eddie and Grace on, but one of the things that I found really interesting is that we've seen so many different champions really come out this tournament. I have to find the exact numbers because I know it was somewhere, but like Jax is usually a champion that like he doesn't see a ton of play, but like this season he's been seeing more, or like he didn't see a ton of play in the last few years. Every now and then he pops up, usually around Worlds, because it's like he's very much like that kind of character that you have a lot of solo queue players make their names on. But yeah, one of the things that's really fascinating about that is like just the way Gwen functions. Jax is built to be like, oh, you have this zone of invulnerability where it's like outside of it you take no damage. Okay, well, I like being up close and personal, and I'm gonna start whacking you with my light post. That's my favorite thing about Jax is like, do you know the backstory?
His whole bit is he's like the most skilled weapons master in the world.
So he gave himself a handicap.
Anyone a possible chance against him, he wields a light post. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great because like. This is unrelated to Worlds, but like League has so many fun little things like that. Like I love the relationship between Graves and Twisted Fate and Misfortune in there as well.
And you've got Senna and
Lucian,
Senna,
Lucian, and Thresh,
and Thresh, because if I recall, Senna was killed by Thresh and put in his lantern, but escaped, and that's the whole reason for like her shadowy black mist abilities now.
Yeah, same with like Yasuo and Yone and Yasuo and Talia. Like, there's a lot of fun like interactions there, and it's part of why, which like, it's been so disappointing seeing where League of Legends, a lot of their like current story stuff is going, because it's just such a squandering of potential. Unrelated to what we're doing here.
Are you bringing up possibly Viego?
Oh, Viego's really cool too. Really cool. Although,
because last time I saw him like make an appearance in Worlds, he dominated. I think it's his E. I haven't played him yet, but I do know his abilities. It's his the blade that goes against the walls and gives him an area of stealth.
Oh yeah,
that one is nasty. I've seen that cost many a laner their lives.
Yeah, it's okay. Hold up, I was actually trying to see if I could get like
numbers.
Yeah, okay, never mind. Only about 80 champions have been played, so we're hovering around 60%. Now I'm actually... Viego's kind of interesting now, right? Because like, you see Robust earlier in the year now, he doesn't see a ton of play, but every now and then he comes out because you can get like the right comps to work around him. But yeah, kind of circling back just so we can kind of talk about the
use of Baron and objectives and like kind of picking between them.
Yeah, I was mainly going to talk about finish up the Damwon Kia T1 series just because I thought it was really good, and it's kind of a testament to Damwon, defending world champions. I've always really liked that story. I've always been a sucker for it, where it's like you have the defending world champions coming back. Like, I don't root for them, but it's always like a fun little narrative to track, right? Because Damwon, at least just like since they've been able to make it to Worlds, making to Worlds the last 3 years, it's like their first year. It's a team of really young players. Actually, is that? Now I have to see if the team is the same. I don't think it's the same because I think they've gone through middling roster
I did remember
changes.
hearing a few replacements mentioned during Worlds.
Yeah. So 2019 was really when they kind of hit their stride. That was when they had Nagari, who went to FPX, and that was 2020. Oh, so yeah, the only real change is that they have they added Khan. And one of the things that's really exciting is Khan is one of he's been around forever. I think had he won Worlds before?
Yeah, I think he won, if not Worlds, he won World Championships, was mentioned. But he definitely had a few big title victories under his belt.
Yeah, okay, tournament results. That's what I was looking for. But yeah, so Khan's been around forever. He played at MSI.
Oh, dang.
Oh, never mind. That's not what I thought it was. He won. So he won LCK Summer in 2017 with Longzhu, and then that was the year Longzhu really disappointed. They won LCK Spring Playoffs, came second at MSI. Didn't make it to Worlds in 2018, and then won LCK Springs Playoffs with SKT. Okay, and now it's all coming back to me. Yeah, so Khan's been around the block for a while, and so he's actually going off to military service after this year. So it's one of those things where it's like a world title has evaded him his entire career. He joins Damwon, which is this crew of players at this point who've been together for... When did... Oh, okay.
And from what I was watching with the gameplay, Khan almost was kind of their designated punching bag. He was okay taking hits, taking being taken down a few times. He definitely got ganked a few times. He got jumped on top lane a number of times. But a lot of that was he was okay just kind of staying there, being that reliable top laner for a lot of that time, being the person to take those hits so that their jungle, so that their bottom laners could do the damage, so that Showmaker could pull off those pokes and pull off those moves and do that roaming. He was willing and able to take that heat and not get tilted by taking those deaths, like taking that into account as his role as the top laner.
Yeah, and it's just like a tremendous statement to how well he can play weak side, right? Like if we're going through it, like he was never exactly given like a heavy. Sometimes he was. He was given some. He played a lot of Lucian.
He played Graves.
Whoa. Yeah, I always forget Lucian Top comes out every now and then. I love those kind of glass cannon comps though.
Yeah, he did
it's always
play
great.
Graves top.
Yeah, he did play Graves.
He did pretty well. There were a few moves that I think were a bit too gutsy and got him killed. If I recall, there was one time, a moment.
So he plays a lot of like self-sufficient champs, champs that don't need a lot of attention. Graves is one of those. Lucian's weird because like
Lucian can be, but if he's just so squishy, if he's caught off guard.
Yeah.
Whereas people like Graves. They can hold their own. If you get too close, Graves will punish you.
Yeah, and then with just how you build Graves nowadays, it's like you have so much built-in sustain. You're usually on fleet footwork anyway, so you're getting the heal from that as well, plus shield bow and bloodthirster. And so, I think it's really interesting because like you were, we'll cycle back to that a bit. But one thing that was really interesting is we had this amazing 5-game series where there's a lot of back and forth. We had Faker, kind of coming back into the Faker of old, which is really nice. Just because Faker's interesting because he's like, anything that can and would be said about him has been said. He is the greatest of all time. Like, I saw something where it's like, oh no, Showmaker's the greatest of all time now if he wins the second Worlds, because it's like, oh, better competition. It's like, no, Faker wrote the book on how you not only play mid lane, but how you play League of Legends as a whole. He has the Worlds titles to back it up. He's played against significantly good competition and won. It's like, he is, to me, still the benchmark. Like, at this point, it's like comparing, like, an aging Michael Jordan to like prime LeBron, right?
It also was interesting because with you saying that, I believe it was Game 5, the beginning of the game mid lane brawl when they both took corrupting potion, and they had it was Showmaker versus Faker mid lane brawl right at the beginning, and Showmaker came away with it. They both decided to see like what they could get out of that starting fight, and Faker had to go. He had a backup coming up from behind from their jungler, but Zoe with those pokes was just able to put him aside.
Just in general, like that last game was so that it's kind of funny because it's a poke comp with two champions that want to be right up in the face of their opponent, right? Or three, including Rakan. But it works so well, right? Because you would have Zoe hit her paddle stars, hit her bubbles, really kind of set up a lot of low health targets. Then you'd have Ziggs over top, chucking his mega Inferno Death Bomb.
Not to mention the multiple very skilled uses of the satchel charge.
Yeah.
That
if
I recall, there was a pick down bot lane during that match where the ADC was trying to get away and did not notice the satchel charge. Ran into it, got bounced away from the turret and caught.
Oh, yeah. Ziggs is a champion, like specifically bot lane, that I've always found really interesting because it's like, it's your ability to like, if you need more AP damage, you throw Ziggs bot because like you effectively play him the same way you play an AD carry, which is, I'm going to sit way back here and just throw stuff at you. But I love being able to see Ziggs come back. I know Ziggs is kind of a slightly controversial pick just because a lot of people either hate it or love it.
With any tool, with any tool, if you know what you want to get out of it, there's so much you can just squeeze out of characters like that. If you know for a fact, and the rest of your team takes into account why you're picking a champion and just exactly the strengths and weaknesses you're factoring in, you can make just about anything stick.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's I think that's one big testament to just how Damwon has played. Is they've been a team that's been been working together forever, or playing together for a long time at this point. I'm actually trying to remind myself.
It was interesting to see T1 made a few communication mistakes. If I recall that last fight that we were talking about with the Baron, where Zoe was picking off people with the 3v5. And there was miscommunication. An ult was used, and someone used their Zhonya's, and it left a member vulnerable. So they had to wait it out.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to remember exactly. Okay, so it's Nuclear that they replaced with Beryl. That's what it was. Okay, so Beryl's been on the team since 2020. And so with the exception of Nagari being replaced for Khan, this is a team that's been together for a long time. And so I think it's really a testament, just like, okay, we know your strengths and weaknesses. We're going to play around those strengths and weaknesses. We know how to make our play style work. And I think it's just a testament to how strong Damwon has been since they've really kind of kicked off. One thing I'm really intrigued by when it comes to Saturday's finals, because we're recording this on a Wednesday. Hopefully we'll have this up tomorrow, give or take. I think it's really kind of... See, now I have to remind myself where Edward or EDG's at with their current roster. Scout's been around forever. Wow. Okay, Mako's been on this team for 7 years. That's wild.
Mako had a really good showing in this last...
Yeah. Mako, So personally speaking, I think it's heavily favored for Damwon. I think Damwon, they have too much. You have the existing pedigree of being the defending world champions, but just like the way they won and then the teams they beat. Because I think T1 is undoubtedly the second best team at the tournament. Mm-hmm. So arguably the second best team in the world. Obviously, you're going to have people who say like EDG is better, but it's like, as it stands, I don't think I agree just because I don't think Genji is that good.
I would agree with you. Remind me who played their Lucian.
For EDG?
For EDG.
Viper.
Viper. I definitely saw some plays from Viper that I think Damwon Kia would not let go, would punish.
Would punish a lot harder?
Would punish a lot harder. I'd also think that he seemed to use his ult a lot less for damage and more for zoning. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if you don't really focus fire and you don't make sure to get people picked off early in those fights with Damwon Kia, they will recover. They will come back. Like some of the best picks that T1 had was able to get their key members out early.
Mm-hmm. I think Damwon just knows, or at least with like the current state of League of Legends, they know how to punish teams a lot better. Mm-hmm. And also they know how to play behind really well. Like, again, and this kind of comes back to the Showmaker Canyon thing. It's really hard to be a team that, or it's really hard to beat a team that has such a rock solid, like, forever it's been arguably the two most important roles are middle and jungle, right? Because like for mid lane, you have so much agency in terms of going to top or going to bot. Like you can't, not anymore at least, you can't just like TP gank bot as a top laner and find a ton of success because you're going to be giving up a bunch of wave advantage. You're going to be giving up a bunch of time top. Obviously you can make it work, and we've seen it work, and we've seen those kind of ballsy plays work. But like as it stands, I think the way Canyon and Showmaker communicate and the way that they know when exactly to put pressure on certain points of the map, and that just comes back to just like how good they are as a duo, but also just like their ability to roam successfully. Because it feels like anytime you see kind of Showmaker moving, you're just like, oh, someone is dying. This is going to end poorly for the other team. And looking back to that final match against T1, it's like you don't really have the champions for that. Like, yes, Talon is very much like a roaming champion, just as a jungler. Zoe, not so much. Zoe is very much like your prototypical poke champ with his Ziggs on top of it. But I think how they did it is that like they were able to blend the different play styles of a Talon and a Zoe so well together, where it just felt like, okay, well, T1's dead. This is over.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that, especially with Talon's just amazing clinching of that Elder Dragon.
Mm-hmm. So I was just making sure I knew the timestamp on this, but yeah,
you're good. But in that team fight around the Elder Dragon, we weren't quite sure who was going to get it, who was going to clinch that, and Talon just went and I believe ulted on it.
You're talking about all the blades kind of shooting out for a second? Yeah.
I believe ulted on it and just made sure to get that pick. They demolished them in the fight. They went down top and just ended it almost right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that combo of that agility, that mobility that Talent provides.
Oh yeah, it's kind of funny because like we've had instances in the past before where we had these champions who got changed and buffed to be jungle champions, and in the moment, everyone was like, oh, these are going to be the guys who really kind of dominate the meta. Like, I think back to 2019, you had Echo Jungle being, talked about as like the next big thing. And instead what ends up happening is Echo Jungle becomes a bait pick because while he is powerful, nobody knew how to play him. And so that was my worry when I saw the Talon pick. It was like, okay, so I know Talon Jungle has been buffed, but can you reliably get, do you trust yourself to play it? And then you realize like, oh, it's Cannon and Showmaker, and they're just going to run over people.
It's the things you were saying earlier about Damwon really hold true to that. Of they don't really seem to play styles that the rest of the team isn't prepared for. They are really in sync with each other. So if someone's bringing talent, it's because they know how to bounce it off the other people on the team. And you're right. I would put favor on the side of Damwon Kia against EDG.
Yeah.
Just because there are excellent players on EDG's team.
Oh yeah, no, EDG, like, just in terms of the roster, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, but like,
No, you're good.
they EDG's funny because they've had a historical reputation for choking at Worlds or choking in big moments. And so it's kind of funny where it's like they are seen as like this complete underdog right now, right? Because it used to be, at least from, or I guess just 2018 and 2019, it was like, oh, China's now the new big dog. China's going to be the team that really is kind of running, or China's really the region that's going to be running stuff for a while. And that was the case with, you had IG and then FPX, and it looks like Top was going to continue that before Damwon and, or who beat Top last year? I think it was Suning. Before like Suning and everything. But what's really kind of fascinating right now is it's like League of Legends has kind of gone under this metamorphosis as of late, where it's like it's become a much more figured out game because you have people who understand itemization better. Although that is a funny thing is that like Korean itemization is not as good as it could be elsewhere, which I find very fascinating. They put a lot of emphasis on a lot of like random things that don't, or they put a lot of emphasis on items that people like historically don't like. But then again, it's like if you're the best region and you're itemizing incorrectly and still winning, it's like, are you really itemizing incorrectly?
You might just be itemizing
inefficiently to where you could be,
or just non-standard.
Yeah. But so, I think we're definitely both in agreement that it favors Damwon because they just look so good. But I do want to talk about EDG for a little bit just because, they've had the arguable tougher road in the very literal sense that their games have been longer, or their series have been longer and more grueling. Back-to-back 5-game series. Gen G is the third best Korean team. And so you're going, okay, well, you had a 5-game series against the third best Korean team. The two best Korean teams had a 5-game series between them. You're definitely the underdog. But I think in terms of where they have the potential to upset them is really going to come down to Scout and Viper. Because I think if Scout, and I mean, Scout is a great mid laner. He's just not a mid laner on par with Showmaker right now, unless I might be misplacing things.
I think a good strategy for EDG would be not try to match Showmaker. Like you know that your mid laner is good, but it should Showmaker. Yeah. So put your emphasis elsewhere. I think a good idea for them is to not fall into the trap that T1 did. They kept trying to go for that Baron because they could not get that dragon. Yeah. So vision seems to be the biggest thing. If you can get vision before Damwon Kia does, if you can make sure to control that bottom half, I think focusing on the bottom lane where the dragon is going to be key to cutting off Damwon Kia at their where their power core seems to be, which is forcing attention to top so that they control bottom, and then just making sure they get that dragon every time. If you can cut them off from that soul, that seems to be their big push on most games, is making sure they get that soul. And honestly, while they don't go for Baron, they do try to push fairly hard for Herald early on. They try to get some of that early plate gold. They try to make sure to zone out. And I think that, countering them directly where they stand with Viper. And while I said that Viper is probably one of the biggest weaknesses against Damwon Kia, who, if they can pick him out, they can take the team down pretty quickly. Yeah. If EDG is able to keep Viper in and be a lot more careful with him than they were previously, I think that can make a big difference against Damwon Kia.
Yeah. So I'd kind of build off that as well, where it's like he is... in the later stages of the game, it is the potential to be a weakness. He plays hyper aggressively. He has a tendency to get caught out. But one of the things that I think works in their favor is that if you can, and we saw it against Gen G, right? But if you give him a favorable matchup down bot, whether it's a Lucian Nami lane or I don't know why he brought out Jinx, so I'm not gonna harp on that up for a bit. But if you give him a favorable lane matchup and you allow him to kind of bring the fight to Beryl. And this isn't to say that, because Beryl and Ghost were at one point a definite detriment to the team, but as it stands now, I think they're less so, and they're very they're decent. They're a world-class bot lane. But I think Viper and Mako, if they want to win this game, you need to be able to punish that bot lane, because keeping them from having any kind of priority around Drake or any kind of just bot priority in general. It'll open up the map so much because you're going to have Showmaker and Canyon kind of playing on their back foot because they won't be able to roam as effectively or work together as effectively. And then, your top lane, Khan versus Flandre is going to be probably a wash just because I'm looking at those two and the historical meanings, or the historical, relationship between the two, as well as just how things worked out between them anyway. And I definitely think that I just in general I think top lane isn't gonna it's gonna be one of those things that where I say it's okay, I don't think top lane is gonna be a priority for either team, and then it gets completely dictated because of top lane. But one thing I do want to say that I'm really excited for is I love Kennen. Kennen's been one of my favorite champions. And I think one of the big reasons for that is he alongside Malphite, so Malphite, Kennen, Misfortune. It used to be Jarvan, but Jarvan's easier to play against now. He has one of those ultimates that's so game changing. If you're behind, or Orianna Shockwave, that's another one, right? Where it's if you are far behind, one ult completely changes fortune.
We also did see Jarvan's ult used a couple times very effectively.
Yeah. Are you talking about which series, by the way?
I believe it was the most recent series, and I think it was EDG's games.
Okay. Oh, man, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Gigi?
Yeah, Gigi.
Gigi? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, he's a young jungler, so that's exciting for EDG.
Brought out Jarvan and made pretty decent use, especially during a few dragon-focused group fights.
He played a lot of Jarvan this series. I think he may have... Wait, that's 4 games. That's 5 games of Jarvan. Wow, that is cruel. Okay.
I know who he likes.
Yeah, well, it's also one of those funny things because earlier in the tournament, I even talked about it last week, where it's just Jarvan felt like a bait pick because, when it comes to how mobile champions are nowadays, the way Jarvan matches up into them, he's really easy to counter. And I say this as someone who used to love playing Jarvan, but I didn't play Jarvan in the jungle. I played top lane Jarvan. But just how it's functioning right now, I'm surprised I'm surprised teams have the priority they do on him just because so many champions and champions that are meta currently have ways of dealing with that and ways of getting away from him. So, I maybe Jarvan. Even Genji or even Damwon played Jarvan. What am I even saying? I think
will say even if it's easy to counter, I did see him almost used a lot of the time in order to draw out those abilities and those summoners that counter him. A lot of times his ult was used and people would flash through, but that's flash gone.
Yeah, and now you have more pick ability. Yeah. So yeah, it is a champion that definitely works that way. So I don't know. I think we're gonna see a lot of Lee Sin's and Zhao priority. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Talon and Kiana priority as well. But I guess GG really likes Jarvan and is just be hey, if you can keep giving me Jarvan, I'll keep finding success.
I would like to see. Shame to say I can't remember the name, but it was the tree champion. Maokai used and see, because the aggressive use of those tree spirits really made the entire game feel toxic for the other team. When EDG was playing, if I recall.
Yeah, you're walking through a minefield.
Yeah, it was horrible, and I think that could be key in keeping Canyon and Showmaker separate, of making it so that if they are to try to roam and try to get picks, they're always walking through a minefield.
Oh yeah, no, okay,
I think if they bring Maokai and use him like they did previously, just everywhere, tree spirits everywhere.
Yeah,
I do think that could pose a challenge to their roaming and picking style. It will make them have to be careful. It would make them almost have to focus on lane play, because both teams, I was thinking about this earlier, I don't know if any specific lane will make or break the game, because the entire team, both teams are so willing to change what lane they focus on based on how things are going. They're never really sticking to a specific strategy.
Yeah.
They're we say, I almost hate to say, Demakia, I would almost say they have lane starters, because as the game progresses, you have everyone everywhere.
Yeah. And that's really just kind of like a testament like where League of Legends is at, where it's like even like if you're playing like a normal game nowadays, right? Like you'll have a point where it's like your mid or your solo laners go top and bot and like will alternate depending on like wave states or just who's also there, and then your bot laners will go your bot lane goes mid just because you want to feed as many resources as possible into your ADC. But like I mean, as it stands, I think we're looking at a 3-0 for Damwon. That is like, hey, I mean, I've been wrong with predictions before. We can go back and look at the other podcasts. I've been horribly wrong when it comes to predictions. But one thing I think that's just going to happen with Damwon this year is that, I think Showmaker and Canyon really want to cement themselves, or cement their legacy. Showmaker in particular, because I don't want to misquote him, so never mind then. I thought like he had said something about like wanting to be the next Faker, and I was like, wait, don't remember if he actually said that.
If I recall, that was a commentator saying that he was the next Faker.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
He's not the next Faker. He is the first Showmaker.
Yes. Okay.
That was the quote by one of the commentators.
Yeah, and so I think that's a really exciting time just as a fan too, right? Where it's like Faker's been around the entire time I've been watching League of Legends. His legacy before I even started watching,
it's there. It's concrete.
Because I mean, the first Worlds I watched was 2014. Absolutely destroyed my freshman year sleep schedule. Little did I know that would become my commonplace. But Faker even then was like, it was like, oh, this was, it's unfortunate not to have Faker at this Worlds because you want to see him against the likes of Pawn and Dade and Bjergsen and Hai and, take your pick of legendary mid laners at the time.
Yeah.
And he wasn't able to make it that year. 2015, SKT goes through it goes through a pretty significant like retooling of their roster. Wins Worlds that year. I think how did they play EDG? I don't know. At that point, it's like T1 and Korea as a whole as a region were so far ahead of every other region that it was just like people used to joke that it was like, oh, it's World season, it's LCK autumn. I think I even made that joke last week on the podcast, or not last week, 2 weeks ago. But I think it's exciting really kind of seeing this like new guard of players really kind of come into their own and really establish themselves, right? We have
really like because the previous like generation of players, we all kind of came into the game, whereas this new generation is growing up basically having always known League. Like,
and how old is Showmaker? Hold up, I have to pull this up now.
But yeah, you've got this group of people who
he's 21. He's younger than I am.
Yeah, for most of their lives have known not just League as a big game, but as a competitive sport, as an esport that has the world's attention, which is just an interesting perspective. It's almost it's watching like the first generation of football players, and then the next generation having come up watching the first generation of football players.
So I think that's a really fascinating discussion, and I love being able to like insert my own little personal anecdotes and stuff like this. He's either my great grandfather or great grandfather. I'm gonna say great grandfather and stick with that. He was a 3-sport athlete at Washington State.
Oh dang!
He had pro offers to go play, I believe, baseball and football, and he was just like, you don't pay enough. Which is like crazy to think about now, right? Because like if you think of, I mean, you just look at the numbers that are getting thrown around. Like Patrick Mahomes is making $50 million a year. He was the first, or he's like, he's a $500 million man is like the joke. But like,
no, I do remember basically that the minor leagues paid better in that in that early era of sports than the major leagues, because those big networks that we're so familiar with these days didn't exist. You were competing between 6 or 7 circuits.
Yeah, and then you had like big mergers, but it's just kind of funny because it's like, you think at the time when League was really coming into its own and becoming bigger, you had just like college age kids who were working like a job or two, and then going on the weekends to go play tournaments or to practice or whatever. And then nowadays it's like you look into like the LCK training regimen, the LPL training regimen. And it's like, no. This is these players' lives now. It's like you can sit there and be like, ask the questions like, oh, are esports a sport, or but I think you really kind of have to. You're looking at it the wrong way if that's your initial question. esports is a legitimate competition in the sense that these people are dedicating ridiculous hours. Like Dylan B for Fun Plus Phoenix, he plays like 16 hours a day, which, I mean, to be fair, I don't like League enough to play it 16 hours a day. But like even when I was like in my like, you know, I'm gonna grind League every time I have or every single moment I have time to, I think at most I was playing like 4 hours a day.
Yeah, I do think you're right. I almost don't like the comparison to sports because it is its own thing. It is a legitimate thing, and I think this goes into a whole conversation we could have on another podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Of what a thing we were talking about previously. Is,
sorry, I was like, this would be a great podcast idea if we can if I could talk to some of the sports guys and like get them in on as well, just because I think it'd be a fun thing. But anyway,
saying, like kind of the development of esports into a legitimate thing. We were talking about this earlier. How it kind of ties into the whole cross arms thing.
Oh yeah,
they tried overly hard to be serious and legitimate because it wasn't seen that way.
You felt the need to,
And I do think they took on the label of esports because if they said professional video gamer
or professional gaming, or major league gaming,
major league gaming, that just didn't carry that weight. It didn't carry that idea that no, this is something you're doing professionally, like, and not even as a joke, like as you said, like 16-hour days. These people are putting their lives into this. They are putting a whole lot of effort, a whole lot of time, energy, stress, everything into performing at this level. And yeah, it's impressive to watch. And it is interesting how it has come this far from, like you said, being something that people competed on the weekends to something that, and not just the players, but you see every time the camera cuts behind the scenes, you see
coaching staff,
8
support
to
groups,
10 people who are involved in these players' lives to help them do their best on that stage. And it's just grown to something that affects so many people across the world in so many ways. Yeah,
it's I think, you know, it was one of the reasons, and just to kind of like circle it back to actually like League as a whole, it's why 2018 is a Worlds that I'll never forget, even though it was, results-wise, it was a little boring. Because it was that first year where, you know, you not only had European teams kind of showing they could match up, you know, North America makes semifinals, and that was insane. And obviously, it's like they get 3-0'd by Europe at the time, but like Fnatic and G2 were legitimate Worlds contenders. Wait, okay, sorry. Now I'm like, I have to remind I'm like, wait a second. Am I completely forgetting about 2018? Was it actually 3 Western semifinalists? It may have actually been 3 Western semifinalists. Yeah, 3 Western semifinalists, and we had IG winning 3-0. But it was just kind of this moment where it was just like, okay, you know, League has gotten to a point where it's no longer just dominated by one region. We finally have China coming into their own, Europe coming into their own. And that's why this year was kind of disappointing in that same way. Because it was like, this year was great for a lot of reasons because it was, you know, you had, although I'm very critical of 100 Thieves' performance because a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, they went 3-3. It's like, no. They lost the most important game. And then we're like, oh, well, we have no pressure, so we're going to win. We're going to win these next 2 games. I already got ornery about that. I need to do it again. But this year, in comparison, where you have the best the best performing North American team gets 3-0'd by Genji, the best performing European team gets 3-0'd by Damwon. And so while this year, I think this finals, I think is still heavily favored in Damwon, as I've said. I think this is like my 3rd or 4th time saying that. It is really kind of a testament where it's like, I think this World is going to be very highly viewed because it's a historic Chinese org, and China, the amount of viewers that they dedicate to League year in and year out is incredible. But then also you have a team, like Damwon, who really is kind of looking like the next big thing. And so I think it'll be very fascinating to see where this final goes, because the storylines at least are really intriguing, right? You have Edward Gaming really kind of wanting to shake off that, you know, perennial choker moniker and reputation. You have Damwon wanting to come in and be like, we're going to be the second back-to-back world champions. We're the new T1, like that kind of thing. And so, yeah, like, at this point, bringing it back to what you had said, like, I think at this point, esports doesn't have to be like, oh, no, we're actually a sport. It's like, no, we're very much our own thing.
Yeah.
We're not pretending to be anything we're not at
There's
this point.
its own dynamic it has.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've really appreciated is that in recent years, like when I started, they really wanted to like stress being professional, right? Mm-hmm. So you had their big scale desks, which I mean, they still do. Yeah. But like their analyst desks have gotten a little bit more fun. Mm-hmm. It's very much like, okay, well, we really might not be hitting that like bigger audience. So we're just going to make sure that the audience we do have is constantly engaging and constantly like falling in love with it. Cause like I've gone through points where it's like I had lost complete interest in League for like a few months. Cause I was just like, at this point it's like, 2019 was pretty bad for it, honestly. Because, North American League of Legends at that point, the reputation was so bad because they weren't performing up to snuff. Mm-hmm. But one thing that always gets me back into it is when I'm watching Worlds, because it's like, oh, right, like this is what it's supposed to feel like. And I mean, everyone's missing I would have loved to see Worlds have a crowd, right? Obviously out of the question right now. Mm-hmm. But I know when crowds are allowed again, it is going to be so loud, because just what esports has become in the last few years is incredible. And I think it was one of my favorite things. I mean, esports kept me sane during the start of the pandemic, mm-hmm. right? Because it was like, okay, I have LCS on the weekends, I have LCS finals, I have Call of Duty, I have CSGO, although I only watched like 3 or 4 CSGO matches. There's things that are there. Like I still get my like, I'm like not a competitive person. I love watching competition, mm-hmm. which is why I'm a huge sports fan. Although I have horrible like ethical issues with everything associated with sports.
We could talk about that with the esports and gaming industry as well. There almost any large
scale moneymaker is going to have ethical concerns.
But something you mentioned, I think we were talking a little bit about earlier, but just definitely a bigger point on it, mm-hmm. how it's kind of relaxing. Mm-hmm. I think that there was that urge that we talked about of, no, it's not just a game. Mm-hmm. And now it's able to admit that, yes, while it's serious, while it's important, while it's big, it is a game. Mm-hmm. Like it's able to admit, esports is able to admit to itself again, mm-hmm. that it is a game. It's not something, and I think that draw of, yes, it's big, yes, it's important, yes, it brings a lot of people in, but it's also a game. We're also here to have fun. Mm-hmm. We're here to have a good time and relieve stress. Yeah. The whole point about this is to enjoy ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think it's regaining that energy again, that energy mm-hmm. that we're not here to bite down really hard and not act like we're enjoying this.
Yeah.
It's okay to take that level down a little bit. It's okay to loosen that color up a little bit.
Right.
We can be here. We can be having fun. We mm-hmm. can be enjoying and shouting and rowdy. Even if you're the people like shoutcasting and mm-hmm. you're the people on that desk, you're still in it. You're mm-hmm. still about it. You're probably having just as much of a good time as the 5 or 6 friends in a basement sharing pizza and a soda, mm-hmm. watching the finals.
Yeah. I mean, funny you even say that, because I think I'm actually going to have some friends over to watch the finals, yeah.
I was about to say, that sounds fantastic.
But yeah, it's, and I think we're actually running close to time, so I'm not going to let this go on for too much longer. But to kind of bring it back to this in and of itself, I'm very excited to see how this concludes, because we have so many different narratives. I mentioned it earlier. But the one thing I'm really, really curious about is seeing, does China still have claim to being the top dog region? Obviously, you had RNG beating Damwon at MSI. Or is Damwon really finding themselves in a position to be, that next T1 level organization where they start establishing their own dynasty? And so my personal prediction is I think EDG will go home happy with a 3-1 loss. I think Damwon's taking it. I'll let you give your prediction, then I'll finish my little spiel.
I think it's completely possible for EDG to take away the win here. They just need to watch out to not be predictable. That is the biggest weakness that you can have against Damwon, is to have a play style that they can track through the rest of the game. They seem to take the first half letting you decide how you want to play, and then they come in and counter that.
Yeah.
Either way, I don't know if we can call it, because I just think both teams have shown off their ability to counter, their ability to come back, their ability to match what the other team has. That I do think I think you're right to call for Damong, but I also think you're right in saying that you don't know. It's going to come down to the gameplay. I think, and to the point you made, I feel that no matter how this goes for Damwon Kia, I think China has cemented its place.
Like,
whether
like
or
they
not
are,
they come out first, they've shown they've got stuff. They've shown they have game. They've shown that they have what it takes to make it into the finals. Even if they don't win it all, every other team out there is going to have to keep their eyes peeled for the moves that any Chinese team is going to make.
Yeah, and we were kind of mentioning kind of money and stuff like that earlier, but I think it's an interesting conversation to bring here in particular, right? Because it's like China has kind of developed a reputation, or China and NA have both done this, where they've just become this like kind of notorious for being like, okay, we're just going to open the checkbook and that's how we're going to become relevant.
Yeah.
But I think, I think this is really going to set the stage for kind of like that next generation of league.
Yeah.
We've already had, how I describe it is you had like beta to about past season 4, and then you had the map change. So season 5 onward was kind of like, the faker or also you had, I'm already destroying my own metaphor. Anyway, I feel like this is really kind of setting the stage for kind of the future of League, because if Damwon does win this, they are going to be seen as that next great org, and they're going to have a lot of expectations riding on that. But if EDG comes out and wins this, I think you're going to see a massive, I don't think it's going to drastically change things, but I think like narratively speaking and story-wise, at least for the future of League, you're going to see a lot of conversation about like, okay, how high can China get in terms of like, is the IG FPX like generation, is that like, or not generation, is the IG FPX kind of like series of back-to-back world titles, was that really just kind of like a quick glimpse at what was about to come in the 2020s? But I think more than anything, it's just, I'm just excited to watch really good League of Legends.
And I think what all the other teams have shown us is that no matter how well you do in the past, it never really dictates how well you're going to do in the next Worlds.
Yeah.
We've seen teams that crushed previously.
I mean, Damwon was one of them.
Yeah. Just unable to hold their own in these games, unable to keep up that performance. I think that even if EDG doesn't come away with the win, if they show that they took Damwon to task, that they gave them a challenge worth having to pull the stops out for, I think that could really inspire that story, that narrative that you're talking about might come out if they win. I think that can happen even if they lose, even if they don't make it to that championship.
Yeah.
I do think that if they show that they've got what it takes to give them a challenge and run for their money, I think that can come out too.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It'll be a good one. 5 a.m. Pacific, Saturday morning.
Yeah, tune in.
Tune in, and then honestly, like
tune in, get that in-game loot box.
Get those drops.
Get those drops.
But yeah, I mean, I think you summed that up really well. I can't really think of a great way to follow that up. But I just want to say,
I look forward to watching the game. It was good to talk to you. Let's hopefully have a conversation about this afterwards. We can see what happens.
But yeah, thank you guys again for watching our podcast. It was a great time having Taylor on. A lot of great conversation. I thought we were going to be more focused on the game, but we went into a lot of kind of like a lot of interesting directions that I loved.
Turns out there's a lot to talk about with League. Turns out it's almost a complex, dynamic topic
with a lot going on. Who'd have thought?
For over a decade.
Yeah, but seriously, thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next week. We're actually hopefully going to get another podcast out this week alongside this one. Taylor and a few others are running a tutorial podcast on some League of Legends, which I think is going to be really exciting. It's been an idea we've been bouncing around since DTV Esports was really kind of founded. But yeah, thank you guys for everything. We'll see you guys next week.